Hello. Today we are here to critically analyze the video from the World Economic Forum 2018 in Davos named Bridges vs. Borders, the Migration Dilemma. Along with me, Seann, I have my team members Joshua, Winston and Lalith who will take this entire conversation forward. The issue. Immigrants move from their country of origin due to better opportunities, political turmoil and climate change. Ronald Reagan once quoted saying that, in America, your origin matters less than the destination, thus showing that immigration is crucial to democracy. Immigrants in the US sent up remittances of up to $78 billion to Latin America, thus proving that good migration contributes to democracy and promotes diversity. In the video, it is mentioned that 3.5% of people in the world live in a country that is not their origin country, that is, the country that they were originally born in. Many of the Fortune 500 company CEOs have an immigrant background, which makes them enthusiastic, hardworking, and able to work with a global mindset. The main causes of migration are as listed over here. Lack of jobs, services, and amenities force people to move to other countries due to higher potential employment opportunities as well as better services. Families choose to migrate to other countries due to safer atmosphere and low crime rates for the sake of their children. Natural calamities like floods and droughts force people and put their lives at higher risk, which forces them to move to other countries due to lesser risk of natural hazards and due to presence of higher food supplies. There has also been a rise in migration to other countries for people due to human trafficking, sexual violence and theft among the people. I will now pass it on to Joshua to take on this conversation forward.
I'll be talking about the panel discussion and all the topics that they've been asked and the questions that have been asked for each panellist. First of all, with Hikmet Ersik, who is the president of the Western Union Company, and they hire a lot of immigrants and distribute them out, and he uses them in a profitable way, but also in a natural way. The issue that he was asked was, what issues does this raise for the business side, as he has inside knowledge on this. He mentioned that with all the immigrants that are going into different countries that are working legally, they send home a lot of remittances, and this accounts for 600 billion in foreign direct investment, which is probably, as he quotes, probably the largest in the world in foreign direct investment. And if the countries, such as the US, that don't want these immigrants to be in their country, this would decline dramatically, affecting both the country that the immigrants are going to and their home countries. So on a business front, it will be bad for the economy and both countries' economies. Secondly, Alejandro Ramirez is the CEO of Cinepolis, he's from Mexico, and also the company is in Mexico. And he states, given the backing to immigrants, because he was asked if they have a good impact. And he's actually involved in his business. He quoted saying that he sends 100,000 employees over to the US that are immigrants, and obviously legal. And he quotes that, given the backing to this, that it can be a good thing. That in Canada and Mexico, they have an agreement that since 1974, Canada allowed 25,000 Mexicans to go over to Canada and work for up to 8 months. They have to apply for this, and it has been successful since then. The Mexicans enter Canada, they work, they send back remittances, they contribute to the Canadian economy, and it works for both countries. Like Ersik said, it benefits both of them on a financial sense. After they've been working for these 8 months, they go back home for the remaining months of the year, and during this time they can apply to go back to Canada for another 8 months the following year. And as I've said, this has been working since 1974, and it's been beneficial for everyone, showing that immigrants moving into different countries is not a problem. Thirdly, Alicia, she is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations in Latin America, and she was asked the question, is immigration a threat to democracy? To which she replied that she believes that it is not a threat when done correctly, when regulated and monitored, and especially legal. She believes that the legal immigrants just add to everything their country has. So firstly the economy, and then she mentioned the culture. They bring a lot. They bring value, they bring their own cultures, they add to the current cultures, they take everything in, and overall they add to democracy. And also, the next panellist, Platon, he's a photographer and he likes to bring the human side to perspective. In this case, all the data and the questions that the other panellists are talking about, he wants to bring some photos to this to show them what's really happening. So he goes to different parts and countries, takes pictures, he speaks to the immigrants, asking their perspectives. And he was asked, what is your take on the US border situation? For where he's been down, he's researched this, he's done some detective work, he's been down there, and he discovered that the 700-mile border force they've got down there, the US border, is not covering all of the border. They've got a lot of miles left to cover, over 2,000 miles I believe. But the space in between this US border don't cover up. They believe that they don't need to because it's too dangerous for the immigrants to cross into the border. However, the immigrants still do this because of the need to provide for their family and the poor situations that they're in their other countries, such as the issues and causes that were raised in the previous slides. He goes into this area and he's taken photos and he's spoken with the people that are there. And this one lady who resides in this area, named Lucy, she photographs the immigrants that are going on this journey and the ones that have actually died, and she collects the bodies and she does everything necessary to sort out the situation. And she finds all their belongings on them, and never once has she found any weapons or anything that some people associate with immigrants, the bad associations anyway. The only thing she's found on them was watches, wallets, photos of their families, so you just wouldn't expect that. You'd expect them to have something else. The situation is a lot worse than people think. Another way that Platon tries to develop a human side, he went to immigrant protest, where a little girl called Evelyn, she had a t-shirt painted on her saying something along the lines of let my dad free, along those lines. And she was protesting, she was really happy, she was giving it her all. And he asked to take a picture, and after he did this, she was really shy, hiding behind her mum. And he had to gain the trust of this little girl for many hours to try and get her back out, because he didn't want to take the picture of her cowering and being sad. He wanted to take a picture being brave and showing that they're trying to fight for their rights and that they're struggling to get these rights. And that's one of the many things that he tries to bring out in his work. And lastly, Cree Yang, the founder and CEO of Life Guide, she was an immigrant herself who moved to the US when she was 13, and she provides many jobs for a lot of immigrants and helps build up a foundation. She's also made a foundation for mental health services for immigrants. It provides any services they need, as in the US it's not very easy accessible to get this sort of services. She also does a lot of research, and she spoke to her friends where she's based in California, and specifically in the Silicon Valley, where they have 800,000 immigrants, and these are mainly children, which people wouldn't think of as just children, but the 800,000 people would mainly think of, well, the US in particular, they would believe these to be bad people, but again, yeah, just children. And they contribute to over 12 billion in US dollars, which is a lot of money to contribute for immigrants. And a lot of these people also, aside from the children, are getting recruited by Eastern countries for their skills, as a lot of them, they're all trained really well coming into it. They're lawyers, surgeons, engineers, they've got many degrees and they can offer a lot. And that's why these Eastern countries, they're recruiting them, they're going out of their way to find these immigrants. They're actually going to pay them double what they were going to get before because of how much good they can do to the economies. And these countries know that, and that's why the US, with their plans, are actually going to suffer. I'll pass you on to Lalith.
We'll be discussing on the discourse panel views. Many of the panelists on the board have different view on immigration. So the panel members were discussing about stigmas and the climate change, and they were discussing about the great diversity and the economic growth. And the panel members were also discussing about the immigrants impacting GDP of the specific country, and they were also discussing about how technological invention is advanced through immigrants and to increase productivity of work. And the panel members were discussing about the trade agreements between countries in the globe of and the role of global union. One of the business leaders, Mr. Ershik, quoted that my mom is Catholic, my father is Muslim, and I'm married to a Hindu. It works in my case. So financialization of economy creates importance of finance, which has enormous impact upon society, organizations, and individuals. That's economy. Real economy explains much more about the impact on GDP, inflation, and unemployment. Immigrants have global backgrounds, have certain edge over the global understanding of product or services to serve better customer needs, which results in great economic growth. Immigrants contribute to 9% of the global GDP. If immigrants are not allowed, global GDP will be down by 5%, which would affect the global economy in terms of finance. Many of the panelists were discussing about the cities in America like Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, which were open to immigrants, had more labor force between 1990 and 2007. And the cities which grew less were Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Detroit had lower share of immigrant force. Many sectors like construction, sports, and service industry in Chile would like to hire immigrants in private companies with official paperwork. And the goods which are produced in countries like Jordan in refugee camps were not being transported to Asian and African countries due to lack of trade agreements and the role of global union. Country open to immigrants have growth in terms of technology, finance, and other aspects as well, because better understanding of every market by employing people from different backgrounds and be more dynamic. Josh will take over the presentation.
I'll now be talking about power and resistance and how this affects the topics that are covered in the video. Firstly, there are 4 types of approaches to power and resistance. One-dimensional, which is behavioural view. Two-dimensional, political view. Three-dimensional, the radical structural view. And the 4th would be the relational approach based on the Michael Foucault approach and view. All 4 of these could be used in the topic of migration. However, I'll be focusing on the three-dimensional approach and also the relational approach by Michael Foucault. For the topic in the video about migration, there is a top-down approach, and this is because there's a lot of power in the top of operations. So for example, we'll use Donald Trump, as he has a lot of power on what's going on with immigration, and he can force this on, as for example, he wants to build a wall, and a lot of people don't want this. However, because he's at the top, he's putting his power down onto the people, and they're not going to be able to stop this. So the people down at the bottom, they have no power against him. The migration dilemma can be linked to the radical structural view, as it's dominated by social and political focus and agendas. So again, for example, with Donald Trump, during his campaign, he used a lot of scaremongering by making the immigrants seem nasty and violent. However, this is not the case, and they just want the opportunity to survive and live good lives. So in his campaign, he was on similar points to his other competitors, and as soon as he mentioned the immigration campaign that he was going to go for and his ideas about this, his points shot up. And this is where he used narratives and social construction, as we'll mention later on, to divide the people and gain an advantage over everyone. This also could be said for Brexit, as when the campaign was run on that, they also used this because they tried to get a lot of people to think about immigration over to the UK was a bad thing, where, as we're seeing, it's a lot more complicated than what people first thought. But people are using their power over the people to give them false information or information they don't properly understand, and from there they're creating the power and forcing it on the people. Foucault's model of power, he first, a quote from him shows that power is not the hammer because the hammer needs the nail. The power is the hammer because that is the position that, again, for example, Donald Trump, he's the president of the United States, he has the power to push down on people. However, without the immigration problem, he wouldn't be able to force this power on anyone. So he wouldn't be able to get those points in his presidential campaign. He would just be on the same amount as everyone else, but he uses this problem and he creates a problem from it to push down and knock in the nail. Although all the panellists believe in a positive view on the migration dilemma, the issue of power could be deceiving the public, and this is due to large companies in the US. They are using illegal immigrants as their workforce because they can pay them a lot lower wages than legal migrants. And this is bad for everyone again, because they're undocumented, they're unregulated, and this is where the bad reputation comes from. The illegal immigrants, they could cause problems, and that results in a bad reputation for immigrants in general to go down, and people then are forced and they think bad on the whole migrants in general. And as Alicia said, this is where the problem starts. But legal migrants, they just contribute. Illegal migrants, they don't, and the large companies in the US, they're causing this problem. Foucault also states that they use biopower, and this is the power to foster life or disallow it to the point of death. This is a big statement, and especially concerning the migration dilemma, as this relationship of power is set on a larger scale than a prison cell, how they control their lives. They're stuck in a certain place, they have no power. So it's not too dissimilar to how Donald Trump can control the immigrants and choose what happens to them by separating them when they come into the country, as a prison cell would happen where they're controlled by the prison officer. They have no control over what's going to happen. This could be set as a prison cell but on a much larger scale, just to show how bad the situation could be. I'll move on and give you to Winston.
Winston has given 4 frameworks for the social construction, which is called micro-macro theory. First one is macro objective, which consists of society, law, and technology. Migrants are treated as illegal and considered as terrorists, but actually they help in the democracy and development of the country, and which can be taken as an opportunity. And second one is micro objective, which focus on behavior, action, and interaction of the migration. For order and legal migration, there is a legal procedure and with a proper paperwork, but there are some illegal migrants which forces the government to take some negative steps to avoid immigrants. Third one is macro subjective, which focus on culture, norms, and the values. As observed in the Chile, migrants find difficult to adopt the new culture and tradition, which is a long-term issue. Fourth and the last one is micro-subjective, which focus on the perception and beliefs of the migrants. Migrants are treated as criminals, and in some cases even the migrants and refugees are considered same, but actually they are different. Moving on to the conclusion of the panel discussion, the issue was migrants were treated as illegal and they were treated as terrorists, but actually migrants are very useful and they are in the advantageous position. The panelists view it from the different perspectives like business, social, legal, and even from the political view, and they found migration as advantageous. Migrants have no lawyers and no representatives, so supporters like panelists, migrant supporters like panelists should stand on their behalf and make them get their rights as others. Now I pass on to Seann.
Coming to the end of the video, all the panelists were asked to summarize this entire problem in one word, and these are what they said. So Hickman was of the opinion that when people move, good things happen, and he supported this right throughout the video. Alejandro mentioned that migration helps to enrich countries and culture. Alicia was of the opinion, and she gave one word which calls it solidarity, and she said migration is good if it is managed correctly and regularly. Platon was of the view, and he gave one word calling it as bridge building, and Ms. Kiri Yang gave it as its compassion, and migration is considered as working together. Thank you so much.